Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unhooked podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz. It is December 29th, 2024. We are almost at the new year. It's almost January 1st, almost 2025. And I was sitting here thinking about what to record for this week's podcast. I like to think about things that would be helpful for anyone on this journey. For those of you out there who are struggling with porn addiction or sex addiction or compulsive behaviors around any of these topics, I like to think of something that might be helpful for you listeners. And one of the things that came to me is around the idea of sharing your story and being vulnerable and letting other people know your history with porn, with sex, with addiction. And it's not an easy thing. I know it's not an easy thing. It took me many, many years before I could talk publicly about my own struggles with addiction, my own relationship with pornography. So I wanted to do an episode today that could hopefully give you some hope and inspire you to share your story, to be vulnerable, to find a safe place where you can talk about what you're going through and the fact that you maybe have an unhealthy relationship with porn, that you maybe want to quit. You don't have to go all the way, but the more that you can start to be real and be honest, it's going to just massively improve your recovery. And so, what I wanted to do on today's episode is actually share the video that I released when I first went public to the whole world about my relationship with porn. This was at this point, I think around 6 years ago, somewhere between 5 and 7 years ago. I forget the actual date. I was living in Chiang Mai in Thailand, and I was going on this live video challenge where I did a challenge with a friend of mine where we were going to go on Facebook Live every day for 20 days and talk about something, you know. And on day 3 of this challenge, I decided to talk about my relationship with porn addiction. And that was the first time where I went public with it. I really opened up about it to the whole world. And it was such a liberating experience for me. I had already broken free from my addiction at this point. I was already teaching meditation, but it was still something that I had a lot of shame around, and something that I was still kind of holding it back and was worried what people might think if they knew about what I'd gone through. And so I want to share this video with you just because it might give you some ideas of how you can talk about it. I know this has been helpful for some of the guys in my Unhooked Academy community, some of the clients I've worked with to see, what that moment might be like or feel like. What can you say and how can you say it? So this was my first time talking about porn. I even mentioned in the video that, maybe it's not the most coherent thing, but that's fine. You can fumble through this. You don't have to be perfect about talking about it. But I wanted to release this, especially at the end of the year, December 29th, almost end of the year, the start of the new year. And the theme is, hope, hope for the future, like starting fresh. And this is an opportunity to start fresh, to be real, to be authentic, to own your story, to take ownership and say, yeah, this is real. I do have an unhealthy relationship with porn or with sex or with love or whatever it is. So hopefully this video that you're about to see will inspire you and give you some hope that you can be honest, you can be real. One little tip on this, if you can find a safe place to be vulnerable, that's the best. It's one of the reasons that I run my Unhooked Academy community is that it's a safe space for men to be themselves, where you can show up, you can be in community with other guys who are going through this. So I guess, this is a little shameless plug here, but if you're looking for a community, looking for a men's group that specifically focuses on porn and sex addiction and overcoming it and is not based on shame, it's not based on religion, it is a secular, shame-free, compassion-based space where you can own up to your issues and start to work on them, then that is what the Unhooked Academy is all about. So if you're interested, check the show notes, all the links to my program, my coaching program, are in the show notes. So just make sure to go check those out if you're looking for support. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with myself from about 6 years ago, where I talked openly about my relationship with porn. All right. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to my rooftop in Chiang Mai. And I've been sitting up on this rooftop for the past 10 minutes debating whether or not to push live because I want to share something that I feel very vulnerable about, something I am quite ashamed to talk about, or I have been ashamed for most of my life. And lately, over the past few months, and particularly the last few weeks, it's something I've been opening up a bit more about because it's a big part of my story and a big part of why I do what I do with teaching people about meditation and mindfulness. So I wanted to talk about it and share it with the world in the hopes that me sharing my story will help other people. If you've seen the title of this post, it's about my story with porn addiction or my history with porn addiction. And that's what I want to talk about today is porn, internet pornography. It's something that I think most people, maybe not most, but a lot of people have experienced or use on a regular basis, but not a lot of people talk about. Not a lot of people talk about what are the consequences of using internet pornography. And in my own life, I had been using it since I was very young, at least since I was 11 or 12. I think it started before that with the Macy's catalog and comic books and whatnot. But I remember dial-up AOL and going online, and that's when the internet really started to make things more possible. And so it's something that I had been using regularly since about the beginning of middle school or high school. And I used it very regularly. And going into college, I remember it got to the point where I was using it so often that I was looking at porn probably every night for about 2 or 3 hours every night. And it was something I kept completely secret to the best of my ability. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family. I was ashamed of using it. And so I kept it secret. And it was a big, scary thing in my life, something I was ashamed of. And what is crazy to me is how much of an influence it has on your mind. So just when you think about watching a movie, watching one movie and how you might think about that movie for the next few days or the next few weeks, and then imagine watching something as enticing, something as exciting as internet pornography, and imagine watching it for 2 or 3 hours every night for about 10 years. It's wild what it can do to the brain, what it can do to your mind. So what I want to talk about just briefly is what are some of the downsides of pornography when you're actually addicted. There might be some of you out there who watch porn and really enjoy it, and it's a very positive thing in your life. But I think for a lot of people, we watch porn and it's a negative influence. It has a lot of downsides that we're not necessarily aware of. So in my own life, what I realized is that some of the influences were things like increased dissatisfaction in my actual relationships. When I was using porn, everything has to be picture perfect, models and plastic surgery. And you get these false expectations of what women should look like, what sex should look like. And it distorts your reality. It distorts your expectations so that when you have a real relationship, everything feels flat. Everything feels like it's not meeting your expectation. And I was noticing that in my life and the ripple effects of that, not just in my relationships, but having this kind of perfectionism in my life where everything had to be perfect. I also couldn't focus. I was constantly low energy. My mind was scattered. I was constantly craving watching porn or having sex. So I was completely addicted to arousal, addicted to sex. And it had a lot of just very negative consequences on my life. You can look at the research behind it, look at the whole host of research studies showing the negative benefit for the negative effects of looking at pornography. So I don't want to go on this too long, but I just want to say that for me, understanding the effect that it was having on my life and starting to learn about things like neuroplasticity and meditation and realizing that what you do with your life on a day-to-day basis affects your experience of reality. If you're constantly looking at porn and getting sucked into that, it will affect your life. And on the contrary, if you spend your time cultivating more wholesome things like
contentment and appreciation and patience and compassion, all these beautiful things, it can affect your life as well. So for me, porn, it was something that had a really negative impact on my life, and I'm still dealing with the consequences of it, of being addicted to sex, addicted to arousal. But the benefit is that going through that process, it opened me up to learning about my mind and learning about how to have a more wholesome life, how to focus on what's beautiful in life. So that's just a little sneak peek of what I wanted to talk about today. There's a lot more I could talk about pornography and my struggles with addiction. And this is my first time really talking about it publicly. So I know it wasn't very coherent what I was saying, and I can probably do a better job of talking about the downsides and how I got clean from pornography. And maybe I'll do that in some future videos. But just wanted to talk about that today. So that's it. Signing off from beautiful Chiang Mai. And bye, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, folks, that's it for today. I hope you have enjoyed this little blip in history, at least in my history, about when I opened up to the world about my porn addiction. So I hope that's helpful for you. I hope you have a wonderful New Year's. That's it for now. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.